Oh, good morning, everybody, or afternoon or evening, depending on where you are tuning in from. Welcome back to the Pat Flynn Show. It's always a joy to have you here, and you may have noticed that I'm missing my co-host here right now, Dan John. We're still waiting on Dan. We'll give him a couple minutes to show up before we start diving into the content. The plan today is to discuss how to build up the beach muscles with kettlebells. This was a topic that was broached last week or the week before in my conversation with Dan. And of course, we are approaching the summer season here in the United States. So look, there's nothing wrong with wanting to train to look good. There's nothing wrong with that. Of course, you don't want to completely become consumed and wrapped up in this sort of narcissistic, ego comparative personality. But at the same time, hey, let's be honest, right? We all want aesthetic benefits from our training. There's nothing wrong with that. So we're going to talk about whether Dan gets here or not. We're still going to talk about it. We're going to talk about how to structure a kettlebell program that will accentuate, if you will, those beach muscles. What are we talking about? Well, the shoulders, the traps, the pecs, the biceps, the lats, all the showy sort of things. So do me a favor. We will be doing Q&A. And if you're tuning in live, say hello in the chat box, hit the like button, hit the share button, tag a friend. All that stuff is very much appreciated. And in fact, we might take some questions before Dan shows up. Dan is almost never late, so this is odd. I'm a little concerned. So let's all hope that Dan is doing well. He didn't come down with an illness or anything, because Dan is like super punctual. So the fact he's not here is very unusual for Dan. So we'll hang out. If you guys have any questions or you want to just chat about something before we talk about the primary topic, just throw whatever you got in the chat box. We'll jam around for a little bit. Also, beforehand, in terms of preliminaries, let me give a shout out to our sponsor of the show, Inverted Gear. Check out their kettlebells. They've got some really cool stuff. And it's not just kettlebells. They have club bells, all types of gear, awesome t-shirts. Their kettlebells are great. People ask me, what's a good brand of kettlebell? The right dimensions, something that isn't going to tear my hands up or bang my forearms. Inverted Gear is just what you're looking for. Awesome kettlebells, great family-owned company, and not only are the kettlebells in stock, which has been an issue, but you get 15% off right away by using the discount code right below, which is invertedgear.com/discount/PatFlynn15. Automatic 15% off anything, not just the kettlebells. Invertedgear.com/discount/PatFlynn15. If you take advantage of that, I would really appreciate it, because sponsors help keep the light on. We have one light here at the Pat Flynn Show. That's all we can afford. And that would be super groovy. Also, if you haven't already, head over to 101kettlebellworkouts.com to pick up the 2021 iteration of our 101 Kettlebell Workouts PDF. We update this every year. We've got at least 30 new workouts in there, where we kind of, every year we take some routines out, we add new ones in. So it's a fresh new collection. It's totally free. It gets you on my email list, where I share really just the best ongoing advice that I have on everything fitness and kettlebell related. So it's a win-win. I think you'll dig that. And the new iteration was just published a couple weeks ago. So yeah, that's what's happening. So good to see everyone tuning in. Thanks for being here, guys. Really appreciate it. And like I said, we're waiting on Dan. Very unusual for Dan to be late. So hope everything is doing all right with him. But the topic today is how to build up the beach muscles with kettlebells. We'll get to that. Why don't we take a few questions first? Maybe give Dan a little bit more time to arrive. And so what do you guys got for me? Hit the chat box. Say hello. If nothing else, let me know where you're tuning in from and what you're drinking. Always good to hear from you. All right. What do we have for questions? Let's see here. I love this live streaming. You guys make it so fun and interesting. Kirill says, so glad to get a notification of this podcast. Love what you both are doing. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, Dan is a great joy and a pleasure to have here, even though he's not here today. Not yet, anyways. He just brings so much value. And I want you guys to know, Dan is, he does this completely free of charge. He just gives his time every week to come and just answer questions. And it's just such a cool thing. He's such a cool guy. He's helped me tremendously in my career. So I am deeply indebted to Dan. All right, here's the question from Kirill. When I clean and jerk my 32 kilogram kettlebell, I often, despite being Russian, because Russians drop their kettlebells, lower the kettlebell down slowly to get more strength benefits. Is this a good strategy, or should I do both? Because dropping feels a bit more athletic. I don't know why. Yeah, let me say this. I think if you're going to do jerks or push press, you should be speedy up and speedy down. If your purpose is to get better at jerks and push presses, right? Like keep the movement ballistic and athletic throughout. Having that extra time under tension, that I think will be detrimental to trying to develop the specific athletic qualities that come with the jerk and push press. Now, however, there are exceptions, right? So that's my general rule, but there's always specific qualifications. If you're trying to get stronger at strict pressing, right, you can use jerks and push presses with negatives to try and help you through those sticky sticky grinds. However, I wouldn't go to the jerk and push press for that. I would actually go to the long push press. So if you're kind of like, say you're stuck with the press, right, and like like maybe you're at the 32 and you're trying to get to the 36 and it's just not moving, right? What can you do? Start to work in sets of a long push press. And a long push press is where you take a deep squat, like a single arm goblet squat. You come out of the press and then you use just the least bit of momentum that you need to finally grind through that weight and then slowly lower back down. And so a combination of long push press, slow controlled eccentrics, and partial reps, I think is going to help. It does wonders for helping you to break through a strength plateau. I haven't had all my coffee yet this morning, so I'm still trying to get my sentences coherent. So if your goal is to develop more grinding strength and you're stuck, consider using the long push press in combination with partial reps and slow eccentrics. However, if your goal is just to get better at clean and jerks and push presses, then don't mix it with controlled eccentrics. Just quick up, quick down, athletic, explosive. It's just focused on that snappy power production, and that's it. I would not blend or blur those two together. If your goal especially is clean and jerk performance or push press performance, fast up, fast down, just keep it snappy, keep it athletic. If your goal is to move through a grinding press plateau, then I think there's better options than using push press and jerk most of the time. And I think the long push press is going to be your friend there. So I hope that's helpful for you. Okay. And Kirill says, I fell into the either or. I know Dan hates either or. So Dan does. I won't speak on Dan's behalf till he gets here. Somebody suggested Dan's too busy doing loaded carries. Yeah, he might be. And certainly we wouldn't fault him for that. But like I said, it's very rare that Dan is not punctual or here on Tuesdays. And like, I'd never give Dan a reminder. He just shows up on time because that's Dan. So, yeah, hope everything is okay. Don't want to raise alarms, but it is unusual that Dan wouldn't be here. Maybe he'll get a Facebook notification that we went live without him. Here's another question. The calves, can I do anything? The genetics, yeah, so our calves a beach muscle, sure. So you want to work your calves. And here's the thing. This is kind of a gap of kettlebell training because there's not a lot of calf work in kettlebells. Why? Because there's also not a lot of ankle work in kettlebells. You know, a lot of the kettlebell movements emphasize almost minimal ankle flexion, right? So we're constantly focused on keeping the heels planted, keeping the big toes planted. We sometimes joke and say there's like no wrists or ankles in kettlebell training, which is true for things like the press, right? We want to keep a nice straight wrist. We don't want the kettlebell yanking the wrist back and stuff like that. So just want to imagine like we don't have any wrists. And same thing with the swing. We don't really want the knees coming forward, so we don't really want too much ankle flexion. So I think that, I think you can and should do supplementary calf work for kettlebell training. What are some good things that I like for that? Here's something I really like for calf work that I don't mention a lot, but I think will benefit a lot of you and is awesome to put either before or after a workout. And that is single leg jump rope. Single leg jump rope, just 1 foot jump rope, hopping on the ball of your foot. It's a great, just sort of bouncy athletic movement, and it will burn and shape your calves up like you do not believe. And I would just say work on going up to 60 seconds per foot, like build up to that. You might not be able to get that right away. Light, bouncy, stay on the ball of your foot, athletic, switch sides, 60 seconds on the other side, do a couple rounds of that. You get into the habit of that, you're going to build up your calves. And you're going to strengthen your ankles a lot, significantly. I think these are really good for kind of strengthening and fortifying your ankles. So single leg, I mean, any jump rope is good for your ankles and calves, but if you really want to emphasize strengthening and defining your calves, then I think doing the single leg, single foot hops on the jump rope is going to be really beneficial for you. And that will fill a gap of kettlebell training, give you a little extra cardio too. So I would put that in there. You could do like your standard like calf raises with holding 2 kettlebells in a rack. That's fine too. I've got nothing against that. So here's the deal with aesthetics. Targeting and specificity does matter. Like if you want to shape up a specific muscle group, you should do exercises that really do focus on and target those muscle groups. So not to get too far ahead of the conversation, and it might just be me today, guys. If we're talking about kind of building up the beach muscles with kettlebells, and we're talking about pecs, right? So pecs are one of those beach muscles, right? I mean, they're like the quintessential pecs and biceps, right? It has been noticed that there seems to be an underemphasis on the pecs when it comes to kettlebell training, right? So with military pressing, yeah, we get the upper pecs in there, and I think we get the upper pecs more than people realize. So good, a lot of military pressing will kind of help build that kind of shelf, right? Which is a cool look, and it'll help build the traps, right? But sometimes people want a little bit more pec work. Now, one option you can do are floor presses, right? But I'll be honest, I think if you can just do dumbbell bench press, I wouldn't do floor press. I would just do dumbbell bench press. I think it's just a better option if you want more of the horizontal pressing. However, where I think the kettlebell can be useful as a supplementary tool for building the pecs would be weighted dips. I think if you really want to build not just great upper body strength, but you want to focus on kind of defining or adding some lean muscle to your pectorals, weighted dips are going to be something that you seriously want to consider on a Beachbody type of program. And I think specifically the combination of the overhead military pressing with kettlebells and weighted dips, that's going to do a lot for you in terms of both strength and aesthetics. So we'll get more into that as we move along, but just we'll take some more questions here. Michael says, loaded carries while walking in place. Is this worthwhile when it rains? Yeah, no, it definitely is. I would actually do loaded marching if you can, if you're in place. So, hold 2 kettlebells and try and get your knee as high up as you can. And what I want you to do when you're doing this is imagine that you're trying to get your knee to your opposite shoulder, right? So you pull your knee up and you almost try and draw it across to your opposite shoulder. But however, do not round your back. So stay nice and tall in your posture, hold the kettlebell and alternate right, left, and really try and pull that knee up as far as you can. You're going to get a lot of the benefits that you would from normal carries, and you're going to get that sort of cross-body motion that my friends at Original Strength talk a lot about, which is really beneficial. Another thing you can do if it's raining out in terms of carry variations that I think is going to be very useful, you can do just holds, like rack holds, and you can walk in a square. This is what I do a lot. So sometimes if it's raining and you don't have a lot of space, sometimes people think like to carry, you just have to carry in a straight line. And they're like, well, I don't have a lot of room to walk, so I'm just not going to do it. Be a little bit more creative, guys. Come on. You can walk, get this, in a square. So and this is good, right? Because like we're kind of meant to walk in different directions. So why not do that in our training? So take a step forward, take a step to your right, take a step back, and take a step to your left. So you just drew a square, and you don't really need a lot of room to do that. So you can just do all your loaded carries by drawing squares, or you can practice your geometry and draw other figures like a hexagon or a triangle or something like that. So be creative with that, and you only need a little bit of space to get something like that done. You can do rack holds, awesome for the core, awesome for the, just that sort of static clinching strength. And with rack holds, you can just stand there. That's awesome. And if you're doing heavy rack holds, there's a couple things I want you to keep in mind. One is breathe behind the shield, keep the abs tight. So tight abs, firm glutes, tall posture, right? So the key with a rack hold is you do not let that weight crush you, right? You have to keep the proud chest, glutes engaged, tall abs. Do not lean back and do not collapse under that weight, right? So good posture, shallow, small sips of breath behind the tight abs, and you just hold that, or you walk with it, draw a square. This is what we used to do in, this was kind of like just standard fare in my old bare knuckle boxing class with my coach, Brian Petty. We just do heavy rack holds and we would just draw squares, heavy rack holds and draw squares. And gosh, that was it's something that stuck with me as something that is just always a worthwhile full body kind of clinching or static strength challenge. It also has an awesome core benefit. So if it's raining and you can't carry outside, that would also be a great variation to consider. Keep the questions coming, guys, because with Dan not here, I'm almost tempted to just save the topic for when he does get here. But I also want to deliver on the headline, so I'm a little unsure right now. But just keep the questions coming, and we'll see where this conversation develops. Patrick says, just recently found your podcast, Pat. Always a pleasure to meet a fellow Patrick. Likewise, my friend. I was actually wondering about your journey into fitness. How did you get started from 0 to where you are now? From 0 to 1? Yeah, good question. So Patrick wants the origin story. Okay, I'll give it to you. So I grew up not healthy, not athletic at all, right? So I just grew up in a generally, I say like excessively libertarian environment when it comes to kind of like eating and exercise. So I was your kid who essentially had free reign on junk food growing up. And all my friends would always want to come to my house, because at my house we had what was affectionately known as the cabinet of diabetes. It was this big cabinet that was just filled with fruit roll-ups and fruit by the foot and Gushers and Cheetos and Doritos and Lay's and all the breakfast cereals, just all the junk you could imagine of the standard American diet. I didn't really drink water growing up. I mostly drank soda. So like I was the product of just the standard gluttonous American culture. And I had really no awareness and no teaching on what a healthy lifestyle is or should be. So naturally I became quite overweight when I was young. And over time this bothered me because I didn't feel great. I was unhappy with how I looked. My friends would constantly make, smart remarks, so I wasn't like constantly bullied, but yeah, there was enough there that it weighs on you, right? I was definitely like the chubbier one of all my friends. And when it came to teasing, that was usually the thing that that was remarked upon when it came to Pat Flynn's turn to getting his. So how did I turn that around? Yeah. So here, I'll tell you kind of an embarrassing story, actually, if you guys want to hear this, if you've got time for a little embarrassing story. Probably, I think this was in 9th grade. We were over at a friend's house, and it was me and another friend of mine, and we were kind of the chubby kids in the group, and young teenage boys, right? What did we decide to do? We decided to have a wet t-shirt contest of the men and see who would win the man boob contest. Long story short, I won the man boob contest among my friends in the 9th grade. And that to me was like, I laughed at it at the time, but it was actually like really devastating. Like that to me was like a super depressing moment. And I was so sort of embarrassed by that I decided at that point, I need to do something. And I remember this is the first thing I did. The first thing I did after I was kind of away from my friends was I went and I ate an orange, because that was all I knew. That was all I knew. I said, from this moment on, I'm going to figure out how to be healthy. And the only thing I could think of how to do was I went and ate an orange, because I knew nothing else. I just knew that whatever else is healthy, it has to do maybe with eating fruit. And I went and ate an orange, and I felt good about that. And then there was this long, arduous process of just trying to figure it out, right? But the best thing I did was I signed up for martial arts and Taekwondo, because I didn't want to go into the weight room, because that's where a lot of my friends hung out, and I knew they would just give me a bunch of grief. Like, hey, haha, look, Pat's in the weight room, right? Well, look who's laughing now, punks. So I decided to do martial arts, and I signed up for Taekwondo. And this changed everything for me. I had a phenomenal coach, tough coach. He wouldn't let me get away with crap. And I was an excuse maker. I was lazy. He didn't let me to get away with it. He really believed in me, and he was tough, and he criticized because he cared. And he taught me how to eat healthy. He taught me how to exercise. He taught me how to persevere. So I was very fortunate that I had a good mentor early in my life to help me cut through all the gimmicks, who really knew about good exercise science, good nutrition, about the importance of consistency and habit, and who could kind of be my trail guide and just show me a process. So I got really into Taekwondo, and I lost a bunch of weight, and I got very enthusiastic about fitness. And I mean, like, I really kind of just transformed myself through high school, especially going into college. I was quite fit by the time I was in college, and really into competitive Taekwondo. And so I was competing Taekwondo in college, and that's when I met Sam. You guys probably know Sam. He's been on the podcast many times. Great friend of mine. He introduced me to kettlebells as a supplement for my Taekwondo training, because I was doing kind of like your just traditional barbell, dumbbell lifting, all fine stuff. But Sam's like, check out these kettlebells. And loved them, fell absolutely in love with them. They were just a boon, super efficient, could do them in my dorm room, helped a lot with my martial arts as a supplement to my martial arts training. And then I went and got, I was the youngest person at the time to actually do the Russian Kettlebell Challenge, back when it was just kind of like one giant hazing organization. So I was really proud of that. And then the rest is history, right? As I was going through college, I just began all this blogging and writing, and I was training people as a way to pay the bills. And here we are all these many years later. So that's how it started for me. It didn't start from any great point of admiration of somebody I wanted to be like. It really started as somebody who had no idea what they were doing, who realized I had to make some changes in my life. Another important part of my story was my doctor, probably back around the 9th grade, maybe even before that. She told me, she's like, Pat, if you keep living like this, if you keep eating like this, you could have a heart attack by the time you're 45 or 50. You're on a very unhealthy trajectory. And that was another wake up call where I realized, yeah, I need to do something. This is not how I want to live. And I'm very thankful for the coaches and the mentors I had in my life. I'm even thankful for my nitwit friends at the time and their stupid remarks, because for better or worse, it actually got me to do something about where I was. So I don't know if you guys find that interesting, but that's the Pat Flynn origin story. But I'm happy for that origin story, because it helps me to relate. It helps me to sympathize and empathize for people who struggle with the things that I struggled with, because I've been there. So I think that gives me a unique perspective and skill set. Raul says, hi, Pat. It's good to watch you live. It's kettlebell time. Regards from Mexico. Well, hello to you, Raul. Cheers. Michael's tuning in from Denmark. Hello from Denmark. He's got coffee in his cup. Cheers to you. Jules is tuning in from Ottawa. Man, all over the world. Mexico, Denmark, Ottawa. Love hearing where you guys are from. Hop in the comments and let me know if you haven't already. Shantuno says, hi, Pat. Good to have you here, Shantuno, if I'm pronouncing that right. Apologies if I'm not. Let's keep moving on with the questions. I guess this is just kind of turning into a general Q&A stream, but I'll give you guys some general remarks on a Beachbody program towards the end. So stay tuned. We will get there, but I'll save the bulk of it for when we get Dan on. I don't know where Dan is. Dan is just completely MIA. If anybody, let's just all hope and pray that Dan is all right. So, like I said, it's unusual for Dan, not just to not be here, but to even be late. Curtis says, this may not be the right type of question for the theme of the live stream. Well, any question's fine right now, Curtis, so submit whatever you want. Curtis wants to know, but are there certain exercises you would recommend for combat sports or jiu-jitsu? For example, yeah, I would. Here's the thing. When it comes to combat sports, my background is Taekwondo. Jim, who's frequently on the show, he's got a world championship in jiu-jitsu, so he knows a thing or two about that. Always get your specific conditioning from your sport as much as possible. So if you want to improve your conditioning, roll more rounds, spar more rounds, do more kicking drills, do more punching drills. The sport-specific conditioning is so important. If you want to just build up general physical preparedness, stick to the basics. Something like Dan John's easy strength, something like kettlebell 1, just do your lower-ish rep, heavier push, pull, hinge, squat, carry type of stuff. for Taekwondo specific, it's also going to depend on your sport, right? Because sometimes there's other considerations. So for Taekwondo, I always wanted to keep my reps lower and weight heavier, because if I started doing too much of the kind of bodybuilding efforts, I mean, there's two problems here. One is I would often be quite sore and tight, not useful for Taekwondo. And two is I would start getting heavier. And for Taekwondo, you want your legs to be pretty light, because it's almost like a sophisticated game of tag. You got to zip in, you got to tag someone and come back out. So sometimes my legs would get too slow and bulky if I was pushing, kind of like the reps higher than really 6. So I think for my sport, it was always helpful to kind of keep the reps lower, 5 and lower, significant amount of weight, sometimes multiple sets, pushing, pulling, hinging, squatting, lots of explosive stuff, double swings, double cleans, swings. You can go higher rep with the kettlebell swings and stuff like that, but you don't necessarily have to. But for the squats and the presses, ladders are really good, right? Because you're really just trying to get that neurological efficiency. You're really just trying to get the strength up and increase the efficiency of the, here's the way I like to put it, right? Is when it comes to output, we can think of like your body is both, it's a factory, but it also has a manager, and the manager is your central nervous system. And you can increase your output or your performance in one of two ways. You can increase the efficiency of your manager, of your nervous system, of your sort of neuromuscular efficiency, or you can just build a bigger factory, put on more muscle. Now, it's always a little bit of both, but you can emphasize one over the other to a certain degree. So if you do heavier, lower rep stuff, you're going to focus on more the mind-muscle connection, the neuromuscular efficiency. You're not going to be focusing on putting on as much muscle mass, which I found was always useful for the combat sports, where I didn't want to necessarily gain weight, but I wanted to increase my output. And then, at some point, if you hit a wall, you might want to consider just eating more and trying to lay down some more muscle, increase the size of the factory. But that will depend on your sport. So that's what I recommend. Stick to the basics. Lower reps, multiple sets, ladders are really useful. And then get as much conditioning from your sport as possible. You will never beat sport-specific conditioning. Shantanu says, love your programs. Thank you, man. I really appreciate that. Always love the feedback. Curtis says, love all of your content. So thank you. Cheers, Curtis. Thank you. Matt says, what is the most trivial thing about which you have a strong opinion? Probably the whole Megadeth versus Metallica debate. It's trivial, but it always triggers people, which is why I like to bring it up. I'm committedly on the Megadeth side. Like, I just think Megadeth is in every way a better band than Metallica. And that also puts me in the minority. And, but that is a hill that I'm willing to die on. And let me specify, I think Megadeth, specifically during the Rust in Peace days, right, with Marty Friedman and Nick Menza, like, to me, that is just, it's just quintessential thrash metal. So that is a trivial thing, but a very important thing to me. And I'm a Metallica fan. I do like Metallica very much, but yeah, that's one I'll battle you on, to be sure. So if anybody wants to challenge me on that, I'd go ahead and try. I dare you. Next question is, apart from the Turkish getup, why don't you advocate many rotational movements using kettlebells like bent press, windmills, rotational cleans, etc.? So I do, not all of those. If you follow my programs, you'll see I incorporate windmills quite a bit. I think those are a very good one. And Turkish getup. So you already identified, right? We already have good thoracic rotation from two of those movements. I'm not a huge fan of the bent press for most people because it's more of a technical exercise than I think most people need. I'm not against it. Bent press, I find, typically only makes you better at bent press. One of the few injuries I've had from kettlebell training comes from bent pressing. So I just don't think that the bent press is going to give you anything special or extra that most people would want that you're not already going to get from Turkish getup and windmills. Again, you can do it if you want. But in terms of getting rotational benefits, I think you're already going to get pretty much anything you would want out of the windmill and Turkish getup anyways. That the bent press is just, it becomes superfluous. And I'm of the mindset that a good program often improves to the number of things you can leave out of it that don't need to be there for the specific goal, right? So if you're like a performing strong person and you like want to do bent press at the kid's birthday party to impress grandma, That's fine. You should do bent presses. That's cool. Rotational cleans, I do not like. I think that they're just kind of silly. I've never really seen the point in them. So I think if you're going to do other rotational movements, landmine twists are good. Stuff with bands are good if you want to do more rotational stuff. But I think Turkish get-ups and windmills are going to be your go-to in terms of thoracic rotation. That's what we want, right? So just to be clear, when we're doing a windmill with kettlebells, it's not like you sometimes see in a yoga class where you have this sort of side bend. That's not what we want to do with a windmill, with a kettlebell. That's going to be a weak and potentially dangerous position to get in when you're under a significant amount of load. What we want with a windmill is a combination of hip flexion and thoracic rotation, right? So we're pushing back into the hips, and then we're opening the chest up, rotating at the thoracolumbar junction and getting a good thoracic rotation in there. So I think in terms of, the rotational exercises, the windmill and the kettlebell are going to be your go-to. And I think if you want to do more rotation out of that, you'd actually be better just using a different pieces of equipment. It's a good question though, and I appreciate it. And the follow-up is that I think rotational strength is very useful and beneficial, and should be incorporated more often. I don't disagree with that. That's why I recommend those exercises and doing them. We want to be able to rotate, right? Like, especially if you're a dad and in your car, you got to turn around and like yell at your kids. You want to make sure you can rotate without injuring yourself. So it's if for no other reason, it's important for keeping the madness of the minivan under control. Feeling manipulated says rack holds and marching in place is brutal as well. Yeah, it is. Marching with rack holds is very difficult. One, you just have less room, right? But it's also harder because where the weight is positioned, right? You have to stay very tight and engaged with that. And the key, of course, is to make sure that the rib cage doesn't collapse and that you don't lean back or overextend. So that neutral spine position is really the critical aspect of a good rack hold. And if you try and bring in marching there, it's gonna make it even more difficult. Are you guys having fun? Is this useful? I'll talk about the Beachbody stuff here in a minute. But like I said, a wrench got thrown into the scheme this morning because I have no idea where Dan John is. So let's all hope and pray that he is doing all right. BJ says, why a full body split over upper and lower body split? I think both are fine, BJ. I think first off, generally when I program things, I don't typically divide them out into muscle groups. I divide them out into movement patterns. So I might say, okay, let's do a day where we do pushing and pulling, and let's do another day where we do hinging and squatting. Or maybe we'll do a day. Here's another way I like to divide it up. Let's do a day where we do pushing and hinging, and a day where we do pulling and squatting. I think those are nice. That's a nice sort of combination there, right? So, but I think it depends on workout frequency, right? So if you're training more frequently, it's gonna make more sense if you want to prevent overtraining to kind of break things up a little bit more. But if you're training less frequently, say if you're only training 1 to 3 times a week, then you're going to have more of the quote unquote the full body routines where you're going to want to kind of just cover more of your bases in a single workout. And neither are wrong, right? It just depends on the person, the goals, the level of experience, etc. So, I have certain clients that they only train 1 to 3 days a week. So those training sessions are quote unquote, those are full body training sessions. We're trying to get as much done in those training sessions as possible because their frequency is lower. I have other clients that train every day of the week, which you think, well, that's too much. And I would say it would be too much if we were doing the same thing every day, or if we were trying to do like a full body workout every day, but that's not the case. One day we might do focus on pushing and squatting. Another day we might focus on hinging and pulling. Another day we might just do some mobility work. Another day we might just do a light jog. So we do something every day, but we kind of break it up and focus on different aspects of physical preparedness, different aspects of athletic qualities, different movement patterns, etc. So I think frequency is kind of the thing you want to think about here. And depending on the types of the type of frequency that you want to use for your program, or the frequency that makes sense, that will kind of guide how much you parse things out or break things up, whether you're going to do body splits or train muscle groups or different movement patterns on different days. So I hope that's helpful and makes sense. I don't think there's a definite like this is better or this is right or wrong. It's definitely context dependent. Saul says that's a great origin story. Cheers. You got coffee in your mug. Yeah, I had water in my mug. I don't know if you guys noticed this. I tried not to make a big scene out of it, but I just spilled it all over the floor. So I had water, and when I was answering one of your questions, I got so excited and I elbowed it, and now it's all over the wall. But you know what that is? That's what we call a problem for future Pat. That's not a problem for present Pat. Present Pat, he's got no problems when he's doing the podcast. He's only got good things to think about, like you guys and your questions. Problems, that's for future Pat. And we don't worry about future Pat. Future Pat will take care of that. Keep the questions coming, guys. We'll just keep jamming here for a while. This is good stuff. John says he's drinking coffee with chocolate protein powder and peanut butter. Dude, I had an awesome shake yesterday. So I did actually, this wasn't even my shake. This was my wife's shake, but I had a couple sips, and it was chocolate whey, coconut milk, so a little extra thickness, and coffee in there. So it was like a delicious mocha flavored thing. And that was really good. And lots of protein. It would be good for anybody who's following like a lower carb thing too. But I quite fancied that. Obviously, you can never go wrong with the chocolate peanut butter combination. There's just no way that's ever going to taste evil. Michael says, can you recommend pulls for kettlebells beyond the row? Obvious would be adding pull-ups and chin-ups. Yeah, you're certainly right. So, okay, what can we do pulling-wise with the kettlebells? Well, this is where we got to be honest and say the kettlebell is a little bit limited in terms of what you can do, because you've got the horizontal rowing option. So let's think movement patterns, right? So one movement pattern is horizontal rowing. Another movement pattern is vertical pulling, right? So vertical pulling and horizontal pulling. You've got the same thing with pushing. You've got horizontal pushing and you've got vertical pushing. The kettlebell is great for vertical pushing. It's kind of limited on horizontal pushing, right? So we got to figure out how we're going to fill that gap, because I think we should have both. And it's sort of the opposite with pulling. The kettlebell is good for the horizontal pulling. It's limited with the vertical pulling, right? So what can we do? Okay, well, let's just talk horizontal pulling. Well, it's limited, but it's not. It doesn't mean there's nothing we can do. So I think we have some still really good horizontal pulling options. We have double bent over rows, which are really good. And you can do double bent over rows either with a wide stance where you row with the kettlebells between your legs, or a narrow stance where you row with the kettlebells outside of your legs. However, I found if you want to hit a higher intensity, better to go to the single arm rows. And the reason being is just kind of rowing from a hinge position will at some point, I think, kind of limit the amount of weight you use. So if you want to go heavier with it, do single arm rows, prop against a bench or something that you can really kind of lean against, and that will allow you to row a more significant amount of weight. Now that's a money exercise. That is, like, as far as rowing goes, that's one of the best exercises you can do, right? You're going to get serious work done for your back, for your biceps, your beach muscles, all that business, right? So don't sneeze at that. That is a serious exercise that we can and should be doing with kettlebells. Other rows that I think are cool or useful or worth experimenting with would be renegade rows. Now, I think that's more of kind of like a full body core exercise, but that's a good one, right? So you're on two kettlebells. Now you got to be careful with these, right? Because you could tilt over and you could eat a kettlebell, and orthodontia is expensive. So you got to be careful with these and, use common sense. But so you're kind of planking on the kettlebells. And then what you do is you shift your weight onto one kettlebell and you press straight down on the kettlebell. You have to press straight down or you're going to fall over. And then from this sort of one arm plank, you row the kettlebell up towards your hip. So whenever you're rowing, here's a tip for rowing. Don't just think pull back. Always think pull towards your hip when you're rowing. And the reason being is this is going to make sure your shoulder stays more neutral and more packed, and you're going to get more back engagement. So whenever you're rowing, always think pulling not just back, but towards your hip, and just notice how much more your back muscles light up. So if you're doing the renegade row, shift the weight, all your weight down into one kettlebell. You row the kettlebell up. You're going to feel your entire core light up. This is a great anti-rotational exercise. And then you row back down. You could do a couple reps there, switch sides, a couple reps the other side. So that's a good one. I think that there's a lot of utility to be had from that. But then if you want to get more pulling in, I think you just need to get a pull-up bar or a set of rings or something like that. And then you already figured this out, right? You said the obvious one would be pull-ups and chin-ups. And there I would say, to use a Dan John line, do the obvious. Don't forget the obvious, right? Yeah, that is the obvious solution. Get a pull-up bar. You can just get one of those cheap door frame thingamajigs and just start cranking out reps. And then at some point, if you want to weight them, which I think you should, then you can tie the kettlebell around your waist. So double bent over rows, heavy single arm rows, and renegade rows are good pulling options. I will also say that if talk about beach muscles, right? Crush curls with the kettlebell are really good. Now the crush curls where you hold the kettlebell either by the horns or the ball itself, and you apply an inward pressure. So you're crushing it. It's like this static pec contraction. So you're going to feel the pecs tense up and pump up, which is always a nice feeling. And then you just perform curls from there. And this is great because it's going to hit the biceps. It's a crush curl movement. Nothing wrong with, guys, there's nothing wrong with curling a kettlebell. Don't let anybody shame you for curling the kettlebell. You say that Pat Flynn said you could do it. It's okay. Great for the elbows. Great for the core. It's a good little core exercise. And you can walk with this. People talked about loaded carries, walking variations. You walk while crush curling a kettlebell. You're checking a lot of boxes there. So it's not a pull. It's not a row. But it's an exercise that I think is overlooked, and it's certainly something that can fit well into a general training program, and it's going to fill some gaps, especially for the biceps. So good question. Sherry says this is always great, even if you choose not to stay on topic. Well, thank you. We sometimes we just have to improvise with these things. That's life, isn't it? So I appreciate you guys being here, and I'm happy to serve you and answer any questions you have. Just want to provide whatever value you can. Kaizen says, hey, Pat, I wanted to ask to see if you had any alternatives or recommendations for improvising kettlebells. Cheers, Matt. Yeah, it depends on the exercise, right? So you don't have kettlebells and you want to just make do without kettlebells. I think it's gonna be exercise by exercise, right? So if I don't have a kettlebell and I want to improvise, some things I don't think make a good swap. Like kettlebell snatches, I just don't think there's a great swap for that. Swings, you can swing a dumbbell. There's nothing wrong with that. I like just doing like lighter barbell hinging if I'm without a kettlebell. Presses, barbell presses are fine. Dumbbell presses are fine. Turkish get up, dumbbell's fine. I would prefer a dumbbell than a barbell for the get up. The barbell just gets really clunky and awkward. Squats. Yeah. If you're going to try and mimic a kettlebell squat, dumbbell goblet squat, fine. It's actually pretty good. I think that's going to be closer than the barbell front squat because the barbell front squat's more up, right? You're not wrestling the weight out in front of you as much. So, yeah, dumbbell's good there. What else are we missing? So yeah, hinging, I think, you can certainly swing a dumbbell. It's a little awkward, but it can be done, or lighter barbell stuff. Squats, kettlebell goblet squats are good. Of course, there's nothing wrong with barbell front squats. It's just a different exercise. It's a fantastic exercise. Get ups, dumbbell is fine. I would not do the barbell. It's kind of more of a circus trick for that. Pulling, dumbbell rows, barbell rows, all that's fine. So I always just think in terms of movement patterns again, but certainly there's no reason to despair if you are without a kettlebell, because even though the kettlebell is better situated for certain movements, if we're being completely honest, which I think we should always try to be, other pieces of equipment can, in a pinch, can do just fine, right? I know there's purists out there who will say, don't you ever dare swing a dumbbell. That's ridiculous. If you're in a pinch, if you're at a hotel, I've been there. There's a dumbbell. I'm just going to do some swings with it. It's good enough. You're burning calories. You're practicing the hinge. So just do the best you can. BJ says, thanks, Pat. Thank you, BJ. You asked a good question. Greg says, I would love to know more specifics on Dan's rucking as far as weights involved, type of ruck used, distance, time. I'm hesitant to speak for Dan. Greg, we can try and save this one next week for Dan to be sure. But I know from previous conversations that he likes lightweight. So nothing excessive, nothing heavy. Oftentimes he doesn't even use a ruck. He just talks about his heavy hands, which means just like hand weights and ankle weights. And like there, we're talking 2 to 5 pounds, just like a little bit of extra resistance on the hands or ankles seems to go a long way. If you're doing a rucksack, I think he recommended just a couple books, right? Just throw some books in there. It does not and should not be excessively heavy, just some mild resistance. And then the effort is typically an extended effort between, 30 to 60 minutes, trying to move at a decent pace. I recommend trying to go up for 60 minutes, try to at least hit 30 minutes, with any type of, rucking, hiking, brisk walking. And then all the better if you can do that coming off the heels of like a sort of a metabolic session or a strength training session, hit that 1-2 combo. You do the hard, heavy, intense lift effort, and then you go and you do the kind of lower intensity, brisk walk, rocking, heavy hands type of thing. So we'll hang on to that one so Dan can give you more of his specifics there. But yeah, that's how he's described it previously, and certainly that's the approach I recommend. Jamie says, any tips on programming for strength with only a pair of 20 kilogram kettlebells that you can press for 10 reps? Yeah. So the truth is you'll definitely gain strength working in the higher rep ranges. I mean, it is a myth, right? To think that you have to just train really heavy and for low reps just to get stronger. No. We found that people can and do build strength by working higher, and muscle too, working higher rep ranges with relatively heavier weights. So there's a couple ways you can do it. One is, I would say, just embrace that intensity, but program accordingly. If you can press it for 10 reps, you have some opportunity there to lay down some lean muscle. So here's a cool routine. All right. You want to talk about kettlebell Beachbody stuff? Here we go. Here's something that I think will help really shape and define and tone those beach muscles, right? And you could do it with 2 20 kilogram kettlebells, right? So if you can do that, if say this is like your 10 rep max, right, which you've identified, then I would do this. Let me give you the specific workout, and then we can talk about how to structure it throughout the week. So drop sets with this can be really helpful for building strength and laying down lean muscle. And here's what I would do. This is going to be a little beach muscle routine. All right. So, and you will get stronger from this, I promise you. Do a set of 8 of double presses, set of 8, right? So these are your 10 rep max. You do a set of 8. So you're getting close to technical failure. Then put it down, take 5 deep, slow breaths. This should take you about 15 seconds, 5 deep, slow breaths. So like you're kind of pumped up. You just did a set of 8, pick them up again and try to hit 8 more, but be kind of like quick with it, right? So you're not push pressing, you're not jerking, you're not cheating the movement, but you're just trying to really crank those reps out. If you can get 8, awesome. Chances are you might only get 5 or 6. But once technical failure sits in, put the kettlebells down, 5 more deep breaths, and then hit a set of push-ups, bodyweight push-ups, until you hit technical failure. So you see the drop set of 8, 15-second rest or 5 deep breaths on the military press. Another set of 8 on the military press after that 15-second rest. Another 15-second rest, and then burn set with push-ups. Do 3 sets of that. It's a fair amount of volume. Okay? Then I want you to do the same thing, but I want you to go front squats. All right? And I would say shoot for 10 reps on the front squat, but same structure. 10 reps, rest 15 seconds, try and get 10 more, rest 15 seconds, and then 10 swings or 10 double swings, something a little bit more explosive. And you're going to get a lot stronger. You're going to lay down some good lean muscle from that routine because you're going to have a high density. You're kind of in that sweet spot in terms of the muscle building variable range. Do that twice a week, at least. You could probably do it 3 times a week. And I think you're going to notice good improvements in terms of overall strength. Like if you do that for 4 weeks, that weight will feel lighter for you by the end of 4 weeks. I promise you. And if you eat appropriately, you get enough lean protein in, and you have a mild calorie surplus. What's a mild calorie surplus? Somewhere between 200 to 500 extra calories above day over your maintenance. So lots of protein, mild calorie surplus. You're going to lay down some good lean beach muscle from that. So we're using a hypertrophy rep range with drop sets And you're going to use double presses and front squats as your primaries. And then your third back off exercise will be push-ups and swings. 3 to 4 sets of each, 2 to 3 times a week. That's your kind of general range. And you can operate within that depending on experience level, age, all that sort of thing. So that's where I would begin with that. That's where I think you'll get a lot of mileage out of just that weight, given the intensity that you have to work with. So I hope that serves you, Jamie, and I would be super curious to hear how it goes from you. Funk says, greetings from California. Greetings to you. And Funk wants to know, do you think there's an upside to training kettlebell sport, even if you don't plan on competing? Not really. I know that might not make kettlebell sport people too happy. I think kettlebell sport is fine if you want to compete in kettlebell sport. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, there are general upsides, right? Like, you will get generally stronger, you will get generally leaner, but because it's so sport specific, right? And there's certain techniques that you'll learn. Let's just be very clear, right? In sports, you often learn techniques that might not be ideal in terms of health because they give you a competitive advantage. And I think that that's just an important thing to keep in mind. When it comes to sports, people, for the sake of performance, often sacrifice their own healths to win, right? This is obvious, right? I mean, like, just look at the shape that people or professional athletes are in. They're usually pretty wrecked, right? People typically don't get healthier by playing professional football. They typically get very concussed and injured, right? Which is, hey, fair enough. Like, that's the game you play, right? So I would say if you're looking to just get in general good shape, there's no reason to do kettlebell sport because you can do higher rep cleans and push presses without all the sport specific technique, like the resting on your hip and compromising certain mechanical positions that would lend themselves to more reps in the sport, but might not be mechanically ideal for people who care about spinal integrity and stuff like that. So look, and like, some people can get away with it. Some people have the bony structures and just their structures that they can like rest on their hip with the kettlebells, and it's really not an issue. But I know other people who it really tweaks them, right? So I guess it depends to the extent or what extent you're taking the sport like very seriously and how competitive you're trying to be in it. Like, the exercises themselves generally I think are fine exercises: snatch, clean and jerk, push, snatch and clean and jerk. Those are the two primary ones. And done in a general sense, I think they're awesome exercises. But once you get into the specific technical nuances or complications that come along with people who want to be supremely efficient to win at the sport, I don't know if the benefits outweigh the cons at that point. And I certainly don't think it's necessary. And that's not to poo-poo the sport. It's a very admirable sport. I mean, there's something especially boring about watching somebody clean and jerk kettlebells for 10 minutes straight. I mean, I can't think of much else that would be less interesting than that to watch. However, it takes incredible tenacity to do that. I mean, the amount of like mental anguish that somebody goes through for those 10 minutes of just moving that weight, that's serious business. So I have nothing but an extreme amount of respect for those athletes. But it is a specific sport. So unless you're competing, unless you want to do the sport, I don't know if it's really going to serve any other useful purpose that you can't get from just taking a general hard style approach. So it's good. It's a good question. And I'm not an expert in gear your voice sport. I'm not. I've trained under a few coaches. I've learned the basics, but I really just don't do it myself, and I certainly don't program it for clients. Good stuff, guys. We're about an hour. Again, I apologize for the improvisation here, but let's do one more question, shall we? Abhai. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing that right. My apologies. But Abhai says, "Hi, Pat. Hello to you. A question about progressing swings. And by the way, if I'm off on pronunciation, correct me. So I do want to get your names right. So please help me with pronunciation on some of these. Anyway, the question about progressing swings: should I increase volume, more sets in EMOM, or move to a heavier bell? Depends on the program you're following. If you're following by 300 swings, you're going to have those progressions built in because we kind of fluctuate and manipulate variables over time. What I've come to appreciate, and what I've done in a lot of my programming is I kind of like to start people with 6 weeks with just a fixed intensity. And then we manipulate volume and density. And then at the end of 6 weeks, if we're going to run a new cycle, then we bump up the intensity or the weight. So just to give you a simple answer, I would do that. I would actually play around with volume first, get in more sets, maybe even increase density, and stay there for a while until that kettlebell starts to feel really light, and then move to a heavier bell. I think that's good. There's more good questions here, guys. I'm sorry, but I have to get to the gym. So we're going to have to end this live stream here. Guys, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate your patience. I had a lot of fun with this improv session. I appreciate your questions. I hope that I gave you some worthy and valuable answers. Do me a favor. If you enjoyed this, please like, please share, please comment. Please hit that little bell if you're on YouTube or wherever so you can tune in for the next live stream. And again, if you're in need of kettlebells or you want to expand your kettlebell collection, consider checking out our sponsor, Inverted Gear. 15% automatic discount if you use the website invertedgear.com/discount/PatFlynn15. And would super appreciate it. Great kettlebells, adorable little panda logo. You really can't beat it. And then finally, we have updated our 101 kettlebell workouts collection. So check that out. It's free. It's awesome. Gives you lots of juicy kettlebell workouts. Gets you on my email list. I share lots of good stuff over there. And I appreciate you guys. And we'll see what's up with Dan. And if we can, we'll try and maybe squeeze in that episode with him later this week. I'm off to North Carolina on Friday. So I'm going to 2 weeks. I'll be gone. But I'm bringing the microphone with me, guys. So we'll try and squeeze in some podcasts on the road. The Pat Flynn Show Road Tour 2021. You guys rock. Always enjoy it. Thank you so much for tuning in. And cheers to all of you. We'll see you next time.